Welcome to an incredible story that will inspire you and improve your English skills at the same time. Today we're diving into the story of El Salvador and its controversial president Nayib Bukele, who transformed one of the world's most dangerous countries through his bold approach to fighting gang violence. In the heart of Central America lies El Salvador, a small country of breathtaking landscapes, volcanic mountains, lush coffee plantations, and beautiful beaches. But for decades, this natural beauty was overshadowed by something sinister: gang violence. El Salvador was known as one of the most dangerous countries in the world, not at war. Murder rates soared, extortion was common, and citizens lived in constant fear. Gangs like MS-13 and Barrio 18 controlled entire neighborhoods, and many Salvadorans fled north to the United States seeking safety and opportunity. This was the El Salvador that Nayib Bukele inherited when he became president in June 2019. Nayib Bukele was born on July 24, 1981, in San Salvador, El Salvador's capital city. His father, Armando Bukele, was a successful businessman of Palestinian descent, while his mother was Roman Catholic. Growing up in a relatively privileged family, Nayib had opportunities many Salvadorans didn't. He attended private schools and later studied law at the Central American University, though he never completed his degree. Instead, he joined his father's business ventures, managing companies and learning about marketing and communication. Little did people know, this young businessman would grow up to lead one of the most dramatic transformations of a country in recent history. Bukele was a different kind of person from traditional politicians. He didn't look like them, dress like them, or act like them. While most politicians wore formal suits and ties, Bukele preferred jeans, leather jackets, and his signature backwards cap. Some people thought his casual style wasn't serious enough for politics. His family nicknamed him the Irreverent One, because he often questioned authority and traditional ways of doing things. But Bukele wasn't casual because he didn't care. He was casual because he wanted to connect with ordinary people. He would later say that his image was deliberate. He wanted to stand out and show he wasn't part of the old political establishment. When Bukele was 30 years old, he took his first step into politics by running for mayor of Nuevo Cuscatlán, a small town near San Salvador. At first, people didn't take him seriously. How could this young businessman, with no political experience, run a town? His opponents mocked him, saying, "Go back to your companies. Politics is for serious people." These words hurt, but Bukele didn't let them stop him. He went door to door, talking directly to citizens about their problems and proposing practical solutions. Bukele won the election and became mayor in 2012. Although Nuevo Cuscatlán was small, with just about 8,000 residents, Bukele implemented innovative programs that caught people's attention. He donated his salary to scholarships for local students. He improved infrastructure and brought new investment to the town. Crime rates dropped and the quality of life improved. People started to notice this young mayor with unconventional ideas. 3 years later, Bukele aimed higher and ran for mayor of San Salvador, the capital city with over 300,000 residents. This was a much bigger challenge, but Bukele's track record and charismatic style won over voters. As mayor of San Salvador from 2015 to 2018, he revitalized the historic downtown area, built new markets for street vendors, and improved public spaces. He also became known for his direct communication style, often using social media to share his thoughts and respond to citizens' concerns. Bukele wasn't like other politicians. While others made vague promises, he focused on specific visible projects. He loved technology and innovation, and he brought these interests to his governance style. He once said, "Government should be like a good app, simple, user-friendly, and effective." This approach connected with young Salvadorans, who saw in Bukele a different kind of leader, someone who spoke their language and understood modern problems. By 2018, Bukele's popularity had grown significantly, and he set his sights on the presidency. However, his path wasn't straightforward. The traditional political parties, ARENA, right-wing, and FMLN, left-wing, had dominated Salvadoran politics since the end of the Civil War in 1992. When Bukele criticized the FMLN leadership over corruption concerns, he was expelled from the party. Undeterred, he formed his own political movement called New Ideas. This was a risky move. Many people thought he had ruined his career by challenging the established parties. But Bukele didn't care about traditional politics. He believed that both major parties had failed the Salvadoran people. At 37, Bukele decided to run for president as a candidate of Ghana, a smaller party, while working to get his New Ideas movement officially recognized. Instead of giving up, he worked harder than ever before, using social media to bypass traditional media and speak directly to voters. His campaign slogan was simple but powerful: "There's enough money when no one steals." Bukele's early political career was filled with struggles and doubts. Established politicians didn't understand him, and he faced rejection and skepticism, but he never gave up. His creativity, determination, and understanding of modern communication kept him going. In February 2019, Nayib Bukele won the presidential election with 53% of the vote, defeating candidates from both traditional parties. At 37, he became the youngest president in El Salvador's history. When Bukele took office in June 2019, El Salvador was in crisis. The country had one of the highest murder rates in the world, with about 51 homicides per 100,000 people. Gangs controlled territory in many cities and towns. Extortion was so common that even small business owners had to pay rent to operate. Thousands of Salvadorans fled the country each year, making the dangerous journey north to the United States. The economy was struggling, corruption was rampant, and citizens had lost faith in government institutions. Bukele's inauguration was different from those of previous presidents. Instead of celebrating with the political elite, he addressed the crowd in the main square of San Salvador. "This is not a victory for Nayib Bukele," he told them. "This is a victory for the Salvadoran people." He promised to put citizens first and fight against the corrupt politicians, who had dominated the country for decades. The crowd cheered, but many observers wondered if this young president could really deliver on his promises. Bukele wasn't the typical president. He didn't rely on traditional methods or follow standard protocols. His producers and advisors often got frustrated with him because his approaches were unorthodox and sometimes controversial. One advisor said, "You are taking too many risks, Mr. President." But Bukele wasn't interested in playing it safe. He believed that El Salvador's problems required bold solutions, not incremental changes. Bukele used social media in unprecedented ways for a head of state. He announced policies on Twitter, fired officials publicly, and engaged directly with citizens. This direct approach bypassed traditional media and political structures, allowing him to shape the narrative and maintain a connection with his supporters. Critics called his style populist and authoritarian, while supporters viewed it as efficient and transparent. During his first year in office, Bukele focused on reducing crime through his territorial control plan. He deployed police and military to high-crime areas, improved prison security to limit gang communications, and invested in prevention programs for at-risk youth. The results were remarkable. Homicide rates began to fall significantly. By the end of 2019, El Salvador had seen a 28% reduction in murders compared to the previous year. However, Bukele's methods sometimes raised concerns about democracy and human rights. In February 2020, he entered the Legislative Assembly with armed soldiers to pressure lawmakers to approve a loan for security forces. This dramatic move shocked many observers and drew criticism from human rights organizations and democratic watchdogs. Bukele defended his actions, saying extraordinary measures were necessary to address El Salvador's extraordinary problems. In 2021, Bukele's New Ideas Party won a landslide victory in legislative elections, giving him a supermajority in the assembly. This consolidated his power and allowed him to implement more sweeping changes. Shortly after the election, the new assembly removed the Attorney General and Constitutional Court judges, replacing them with officials seen as loyal to Bukele. This move alarmed democracy advocates, but was defended by Bukele as necessary to clean up corruption and ensure his anti-crime agenda could proceed without obstruction. Then came the most dramatic phase of Bukele's war on gangs. On March 26, 2022, after a weekend of extraordinary violence, when 87 people were murdered in just 2 days, Bukele declared a state of emergency. He called an emergency session of the legislature, which approved the measure, suspending certain constitutional rights and giving authorities broader powers to arrest suspected gang members without warrants. What followed was unprecedented in scale and scope. Police and military forces conducted massive raids in gang-controlled territories. Thousands of suspected gang members were arrested within days. The state of emergency was extended month after month as the government continued its crackdown. By early 2023, over 60,000 people had been detained in a country of just 6.5 million. Bukele was unapologetic about the aggressive approach. "They are terrorists, and this is a war against terrorism," he declared on social media. New maximum security prisons were built with remarkable speed to house the detainees. Images of tattooed gang members being processed into these facilities went viral worldwide, showing rows of shaved-head men in white shorts, sitting with hands behind their backs, packed tightly together in prison yards. The effects on daily life in El Salvador were dramatic and immediate. Neighborhoods that had been under gang control for decades were suddenly free of their presence. People who had lived in fear for years could now walk the streets safely. Small business owners no longer had to pay extortion money. Children could play outside. By late 2022, the homicide rate had plummeted to levels not seen since before the Civil War, making El Salvador safer than many major U.S. cities. A shopkeeper in San Salvador told reporters, "For 25 years, I paid rent to gangs just to keep my store open. Now, for the first time, I keep all my earnings for my family." A mother added, "My children can now walk to school without fear. Before, I had to pay someone to escort them." These testimonials reflected the feelings of many ordinary Salvadorans who experienced tangible improvements in their daily lives. Tourism started to rebound as the country's beautiful beaches, colonial towns, and volcanic landscapes became accessible without the shadow of violence. Foreign investment began to return. Salvadorans living abroad started visiting more frequently, bringing much-needed dollars into the economy. Some emigrants even began returning permanently, seeing hope in their homeland for the first time in generations. However, human rights organizations raised serious concerns about Bukele's methods. Reports emerged of arbitrary detentions, with many people arrested simply for having tattoos or living in gang-controlled areas. Detainees faced overcrowded conditions, limited access to legal representation, and extended pretrial detention. Some innocent people were caught in the dragnet, and families complained they couldn't get information about their detained relatives. Bukele dismissed these criticisms forcefully. They'd come to defend the rights of murderers, but where were they when gang members violated the rights of honest Salvadorans? He asked on Twitter. His message resonated with many citizens who felt that, after decades of suffering, extraordinary measures were justified. Polls consistently showed over 90% support for the state of emergency among Salvadorans. International organizations like the United Nations and human rights groups continued to express concerns about due process violations. The U.S. government, while acknowledging El Salvador's right to address gang violence, called for respect for human rights and rule of law. Bukele often responded defiantly to international criticism, positioning himself as a defender of Salvadoran sovereignty against foreign interference. By 2024, El Salvador had transformed from one of the world's most dangerous countries to one of the safest in the Western Hemisphere. Murder rates had fallen by over 90% from their peak, Extortion, once endemic, had been drastically reduced. Towns and neighborhoods that had been under gang control for decades were now free. The economic benefits of improved security began to materialize, with growth in tourism, retail, and construction. Bukele won re-election in February 2024 with an overwhelming majority, receiving over 80% of the vote. His New Ideas Party maintained control of the legislature. With consolidated power, Bukele promised to focus on economic development while maintaining the security gains. "We've won the war against gangs," he declared. "Now we must win the war against poverty." As El Salvador continues its journey, the world watches with interest. Can the security gains be maintained while strengthening democratic institutions? Will economic development reach all Salvadorans? Can the country heal from decades of trauma and violence? The answers to these questions will unfold in the coming years. What's clear is that under Nayib Bukele's leadership, El Salvador has written a new chapter in its history, one that defied expectations and challenged conventional wisdom about how to address endemic gang violence. The story of El Salvador's transformation reminds us that sometimes the most difficult problems require unconventional thinkers willing to take bold, even controversial actions. It shows that change, even dramatic change, is possible with determined leadership and public support. And it demonstrates that, for communities that have lived with violence for generations, security is not just another policy issue. It's the foundation upon which all other progress depends. If you learned something new today, don't forget to like this video, share your thoughts in the comments, and hit that subscribe button. It only takes a second, but it makes a huge difference and helps me keep creating better English videos just for you. Your support truly means the world. Thank you so much.